dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow, reach more amazing learners like you, and keep bringing you fresh and fun content every week. So don't forget, like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going strong. Hello, brilliant idiom explorers, and a very warm welcome back to another genuinely insightful episode of Idiom Insights. I'm Emma, your enthusiastic guide on this linguistic adventure, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you all once again, fully prepared and eager to delve into the fascinating nuances of some more common English phrases that truly enrich our communication. It's always such a distinct pleasure to share this learning journey with you as we collectively navigate the wonderfully colorful and often surprising world of English.
And I'm Jack, your co-host and ever-curious word detective, always ready and here to help unravel the meanings and perhaps share a chuckle or two as we explore the incredibly rich and diverse landscape of idiomatic English. It's truly wonderful to be back in the Idiom Insights studio, Emma, and a very big enthusiastic hello to all our fantastic listeners tuning in from every corner of the globe. Thank you so much for tuning in for yet another dose of exciting idiom discovery and understanding.
It's always a tremendous joy, Jack. Today, for this episode, we've carefully selected 4 incredibly useful and particularly vivid idioms that you'll undoubtedly encounter, probably quite frequently, in everyday English conversations and media. Gaining a solid understanding of these will not only significantly boost your comprehension skills, but will also equip you with more natural, nuanced, and expressive ways to communicate your own thoughts, feelings, and observations. These carefully chosen phrases cover a fascinating range of situations, navigating difficult choices, the importance of speaking openly, the inevitable consequences of actions, and the sheer determination involved in fighting fiercely for something.
That's a truly excellent and wonderfully varied mix for our listeners today, Emma. These are definitely idioms that really add significant character, color, and depth to any conversation, making your English sound much more fluent and natural. So, without further ado, here are the 4 idioms we'll be diving into in this exciting episode of Idiom Insights. First on our list, we have an idiom that perfectly describes being in a very difficult situation where there are no easy choices available, caught between a rock and a hard place. Second, we'll explore a phrase that strongly encourages someone to say what they truly think or feel, without reservation. Speak your mind. Third, we'll delve into a well-known proverb suggesting that actions inevitably have consequences, and people will eventually be treated in a way that reflects how they have treated others. What goes around comes around. And finally, rounding off our selection, we have an expression for fighting with great unyielding ferocity and sheer determination: tooth and nail.
Those are all genuinely fantastic, and as you mentioned, very common idioms, Jack. Each one of them paints such a very clear and vivid picture in the mind, and because they are used so frequently in daily life, understanding them will be incredibly beneficial for our listeners as they engage in English conversations, watch movies, read books, and encounter these phrases in various forms of media.
I couldn't agree more, Emma. They're all exceedingly practical and offer real insight into the language. And just before we delve into the fascinating intricacies of our very first idiom, we have a quick and sincere request from both of us here at the Idiom Insights team. If you're finding these episodes valuable and genuinely helpful for your English learning journey, and if you enjoy our explorations into the world of idioms, please do take just a moment to subscribe or follow our podcast on your preferred listening platform.
Yes, indeed, subscribing is undeniably the best way to ensure you don't miss out on any of our future idiom adventures and exciting linguistic discoveries. We have so much more planned. And if you're feeling particularly supportive today, giving us a like or leaving a positive rating on your podcast platform truly helps other dedicated English learners discover idiom insights and join our growing community. We are so incredibly grateful for your engagement and your continued support. It really fuels our passion for creating this show for you.
It genuinely makes a massive positive difference to us and to the show. Thank you all so much for being such an integral part of our Idiom Insights community. Right then, Emma, are you all set and ready to tackle our first idiom, which certainly sounds like it describes a very tight and uncomfortable spot?
Let's absolutely do it. Our very first idiom for this episode of Idiom Insights is one you may have heard before: caught between a rock and a hard place.
Caught between a rock and a hard place. Now, that immediately sounds like a really uncomfortable, perhaps even painful, and certainly a difficult position to find yourself in. It strongly suggests there's no easy way out. What does this evocative idiom mean more precisely, Emma?
That's exactly the kind of feeling it powerfully conveys, Jack. To be caught between a rock and a hard place means you find yourself in a very difficult, challenging situation where you are forced to choose between two equally unpleasant, undesirable, or problematic options. The core of it is that no matter which choice you ultimately make, the outcome is likely to be difficult, unwelcome, or negative in some significant way. You're essentially stuck in a serious dilemma with no good or appealing alternatives available.
So it's the very definition of a classic no-win situation, isn't it? You're effectively trapped, and any decision you make, any path you take, will inevitably have negative consequences. For example, if you find yourself in a position where you have to choose between upsetting your best friend by telling them an unpleasant but necessary truth, or lying to them to spare their feelings, but then feeling terribly guilty yourself, you might genuinely feel caught between a rock and a hard place. Both options are distinctly bad.
Precisely that. Or let's consider another scenario. Imagine a company that is consistently losing money and facing serious financial trouble. The management might be caught between a rock and a hard place. Either they implement painful job cuts to save money and try to stay afloat, which is obviously bad for the employees who lose their jobs and for overall morale, or they don't make those cuts and risk the entire company going bankrupt, which is ultimately bad for everyone involved. Both choices are extremely difficult and are laden with significant negative outcomes.
It strongly implies a pervasive feeling of being trapped, cornered, and under immense, almost unbearable pressure, because there's simply no easy or good solution readily available. It's a true dilemma, a predicament where you are forced to choose what many would call the lesser of two evils, so to speak. Neither option is one you'd willingly pick.
Yes, that's the absolute key to understanding this idiom. Both alternatives presented are genuinely undesirable. It's not just about facing a difficult choice. It's specifically a choice between two bad, unpalatable options. It powerfully conveys a sense of helplessness, of being in a real bind with no clear path to a positive resolution.
So, to take another example, if a student desperately needs to study for two absolutely crucial exams that are, unfortunately, scheduled on the very same day, and they simply don't have enough time to prepare adequately and thoroughly for both, they are well and truly caught between a rock and a hard place. Do they focus all their energy on one exam and risk failing the other? Or do they try to study for both, spread themselves too thin, and risk doing poorly on both?
Exactly. It's precisely that kind of seemingly impossible and deeply frustrating choice.
Okay, I think we've got a very clear understanding now. So, to be caught between a rock and a hard place essentially means to be in a difficult predicament with two equally unpleasant or problematic choices. Are you ready to hear our characters Mia and Mark use this vivid idiom in a dialogue, Emma?
Let's definitely listen in. I'm quite curious to hear what sort of difficult dilemma one of them might be facing in their scenario.
Oh, Mark, I'm in such an incredibly difficult situation at work right now, and I really honestly don't know what to do. It's all about the new project deadline, which has suddenly become a huge issue.
What's specifically wrong with the deadline, Mia? I was under the impression it was clearly set for the end of next month. Is it proving to be too tight for the team?
Well, it was, but my manager, Susan, has just informed me this morning that the client now urgently wants the entire project delivered 2 full weeks earlier than originally planned. That's a massive shift. But, and this is the kicker, she also explicitly said there's absolutely no extra budget available for overtime pay for the team, or for bringing in any temporary staff to help speed things up.
2 weeks earlier with absolutely no extra resources to support that? Goodness, Mia, that sounds almost impossible to achieve without something giving. So, what are your perceived options here? What can you actually do?
That's precisely it, Mark. I don't feel like I have any good options at all. If I try to push my team to meet this new, much earlier deadline without any additional help or resources, they'll be completely overworked, incredibly stressed out, and the overall quality of the work will almost certainly suffer as a result. That's a huge risk. But on the other hand, if I go back and tell the client that we simply can't meet their new accelerated deadline, we run the very real risk of losing this very important client, which could be disastrous and severely damaging our company's hard-earned reputation in the process. I feel completely and utterly caught between a rock and a hard place. Either way I turn, it's going to cause big, significant problems.
Wow, Mia, that really, truly does sound like you're caught squarely between a rock and a hard place. That's an incredibly tough, unenviable position for Susan to put you and your team in. You certainly have my deepest sympathy.
That was a truly perfect and very relatable example, Emma. Mia vividly described her challenging work situation as being caught between a rock and a hard place, precisely because she was faced with the awful task of choosing between two very undesirable and problematic options, either pushing her team too hard, leading to them being overworked and risking poor quality output, or, alternatively, risking the loss of an important client and the associated reputational damage. Both potential choices clearly had significant, far-reaching negative consequences.
Exactly, Jack. The idiom so effectively conveyed the extreme difficulty and pressure of her dilemma, and the stark lack of any readily available good solution. It powerfully highlighted her palpable feeling of being trapped in what can only be described as a classic no-win situation.
It's such a very common and incredibly expressive idiom for describing these kinds of difficult, often stressful predicaments that many of us face from time to time.
It most certainly is. So the next time you, or perhaps someone you know, is facing a challenging dilemma with two equally unpleasant choices looming, remember this powerful idiom. They are indeed caught between a rock and a hard place.
And, as always, we'd genuinely love to hear from our listeners. Can you recall a time when you personally felt caught between a rock and a hard place? How did you manage to navigate that difficult situation? Please do share your valuable experiences and insights in the comments section below this episode.
That's a great idea, Jack, and I'm sure our listeners will have some fascinating stories to share. Let's smoothly move on now to our second compelling idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This particular one is all about the concept of speaking freely and honestly.
Indeed. Our second idiom for you today is the very direct and often empowering phrase, speak your mind.
Speak your mind. Now, Jack, this phrase immediately sounds like it means to say exactly what you're genuinely thinking, perhaps without holding anything back or filtering your thoughts too much. Is that the correct interpretation?
You've absolutely got it precisely, Emma. To speak your mind means to articulate what you truly think or feel, openly, honestly, and directly, even if the content of what you're saying might be unpopular, potentially controversial, or could even risk upsetting someone. It fundamentally means not to suppress your important opinions or genuine feelings, but rather to express them frankly and without apology.
So it's fundamentally about being candid, straightforward, and forthright with your thoughts and convictions. For instance, if you are participating in a meeting and you fundamentally disagree with a new proposal that everyone else seems to enthusiastically support, but you genuinely believe it's a flawed or bad idea for the company, speaking your mind would mean voicing your concerns honestly and clearly, even if it means going against the prevailing majority opinion.
Precisely that. Or, to give another common example, if a close friend asks for your honest opinion about a sensitive matter, perhaps a new outfit or a life decision, and you tell them the unvarnished truth, even if you suspect it's not what they ideally want to hear, you are indeed speaking your mind. This action often implies a degree of courage, as it can certainly be difficult to express opinions that might be unwelcome, cause discomfort, or lead to disagreement.
It generally sounds like it's perceived as a positive trait in many cultures, as it values honesty, integrity, and directness in communication. But a thought occurs to me, Jack. Could it also, in some situations, be seen as being somewhat tactless or even rude if you speak your mind too bluntly without adequately considering other people's feelings or the context?
That's a very insightful and important point to raise, Emma. While honesty is, of course, highly valued, there's undoubtedly a discernible difference between speaking your mind constructively and respectfully and just being unnecessarily blunt, harsh, or even offensive. The idiom itself is essentially neutral about the manner in which you speak. Its focus is simply on the act of speaking your true thoughts. Ideally, and most effectively, one would aim to speak their mind, respectfully and thoughtfully, even when disagreeing or delivering difficult news.
So at its core, it's really about expressing your authentic self, your genuine, unadulterated thoughts and feelings, rather than choosing to stay silent, or worse, saying what you think others might want to hear just to keep the peace. It's fundamentally about being true to your own unique perspective and convictions.
Exactly, Emma. It's about not being afraid or overly hesitant to voice what's really and truly on your mind, to contribute your honest perspective to a discussion or situation.
That's very clear. So, to speak your mind ultimately means to say what you truly think or feel, openly and honestly, even if doing so proves to be unpopular or presents a personal challenge. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this particular idiom in their conversation, Jack?
Let's definitely listen in. I'm curious to see who in their scenario might be encouraged to be more open and forthright with their thoughts this time.
Mia, if you don't mind me saying, you've seemed a bit quiet and perhaps a little unhappy in our team meetings over the past couple of weeks, especially when we've been discussing the details of the new project strategy. Is everything entirely okay? You usually have so many good ideas and insightful points to contribute.
Oh, thanks so much for noticing, Mark. I appreciate that. To be perfectly honest with you, I do have some quite serious concerns about the currently proposed strategy. From my perspective, I think there are some potentially major flaws embedded in it that could cause us some pretty big problems further down the line if we're not careful. But the thing is, everyone else on the team seems so incredibly enthusiastic about it, and the manager is really pushing it forward with a lot of energy.
So, just to clarify, you haven't actually said anything at all about these concerns you have? Why not, Mia, if you feel so strongly?
Well, to be frank, I really don't want to come across as being negative all the time, or like I'm not a supportive team player. I suppose I'm genuinely worried about creating unnecessary conflict or potentially upsetting the manager if I decide to voice my objections openly.
Mia, I completely understand your hesitation, and it's a common concern. However, if you genuinely believe there are serious, significant flaws in the current strategy, I think it's really critically important that you find the courage to speak your mind. Your insights and perspectives are incredibly valuable to the team, and it's always far better to raise these kinds of concerns now at this stage before we fully commit to a potentially problematic and costly plan. You can certainly do it respectfully and constructively, but you absolutely should definitely share what you're truly thinking. Hiding your genuine concerns won't help anyone at all in the long run, least of all the project.
You're absolutely right, Mark. I know it is important to be honest and transparent, even if it feels uncomfortable at the time. Okay, I'll take your advice. I'll try to find an appropriate and constructive way to speak my mind in the next team meeting. Thanks so much for the encouragement, Mark.
That dialogue provides such a clear and practical illustration of the idiom in action, Jack. Mark actively encouraged Mia to speak her mind regarding her legitimate concerns with the proposed project strategy. By this, he was advising her to openly, directly, and honestly express her true thoughts and well-founded objections, even acknowledging that doing so might be difficult for her or prove unpopular with others in the group.
Exactly, Emma. It beautifully highlighted the critical importance of being candid and transparent, and of sharing genuine opinions and perspectives, especially when potential problems or pitfalls are clearly foreseen. In this context, the idiom was effectively used to promote and encourage much-needed honest communication within the team.
It's certainly a very common piece of advice, and one that can often be incredibly empowering for the person receiving it, encouraging them to find their voice.
It most definitely is. So, the next time you, or perhaps someone else you know, feels the need to say what they truly think or believe, even if the situation feels particularly challenging or awkward, try to remember the profound importance of speaking your mind.
And once again, we'd be thrilled to hear from our wonderful listeners about a time when you personally felt it was truly important to speak your mind. What was the specific situation and what was the outcome? Please do share your insightful experiences in the comments section below this episode.
That's another wonderful idea for engagement, Emma. Let's smoothly transition now to our third fascinating idiom in this packed episode of Idiom Insights. This next one is a very well-known and often quoted proverb, all about the principles of cause and effect in our lives.
Indeed it is. Our third idiom for you all today is the profound and widely recognized saying, "What goes around comes around."
What goes around comes around. Now, Emma, this is an incredibly famous saying, one that's frequently used when people talk about concepts like karma, fate, or even poetic justice. What would you say is the core, fundamental meaning of this powerful proverb?
You're absolutely right on the mark there, Jack. It's very much intrinsically linked to the philosophical idea of karma, or the inevitability of consequences. The proverb, "what goes around comes around," essentially means that the way you choose to treat other people, or the kinds of actions you decide to take in your life, will sooner or later eventually be reflected back on you in some form. So if you consistently do good things and treat others with kindness, good things are likely to happen to you in return. Conversely, and perhaps more commonly how the phrase is used, if you engage in bad things or treat others poorly and unfairly, you should expect to eventually experience similar negative treatment or misfortune yourself. It strongly implies a kind of natural, immutable law of cause and effect concerning human actions and interactions.
Precisely, Emma. It's very often used as a cautionary statement or a direct warning to someone who is currently behaving badly or unethically, strongly suggesting that their negative actions will, in due course, eventually backfire on them. For instance, if you observe someone spreading malicious gossip and rumors about a colleague in the workplace, another person, upon hearing this, might wisely say, they should really be more careful. What goes around comes around. This implies that their own reputation might eventually suffer, or perhaps they too might become the unfortunate target of similar gossip themselves one day.
And it can also, quite interestingly, be used with a distinct sense of satisfaction, or perhaps even vindication, when someone who has demonstrably done wrong or behaved unfairly finally experiences some kind of negative consequence or downfall. It's almost like witnessing justice being naturally served. For example, if a notoriously dishonest business person who has cheated many people out of their money finally gets caught by the authorities and faces serious legal trouble, observers might comment with a knowing nod, "Well, what goes around comes around."
Yes, you're right. It can definitely carry that "serves them right" or "they had it coming" feeling in certain specific contexts, but it's also important to remember that it has a more positive and encouraging side too, consistently reinforcing the hopeful idea that good deeds, acts of kindness, and positive contributions are also likely to be rewarded in some tangible or intangible way, even if it's simply by fostering a more positive, supportive, and harmonious environment around you.
So in essence, it reflects a fundamental, almost universal belief in a kind of inherent moral balance in the universe. The idea that your actions create ripples, like a stone dropped in a pond, and those ripples eventually, inevitably, come back to affect you.
Exactly, Emma. It's profoundly about the cyclical, interconnected nature of actions and their subsequent, often unavoidable consequences.
That's a very thorough explanation. So, to summarize, what goes around comes around is a timeless proverb signifying that one's actions or overall behavior will, in the fullness of time, have reciprocal consequences for oneself, be they good or bad. Are you ready now to hear Mia and Mark discuss this timeless saying, Jack?
I certainly am. Let's listen in with keen interest. I wonder what particular actions and their ensuing consequences they might be discussing in their conversation.
Mark, have you by any chance heard the latest news about what happened to David, our old colleague from the sales team a few years back? You surely remember how he used to be so incredibly competitive, sometimes, shall we say, in a rather underhanded and questionable way. He would, on occasion, brazenly take credit for other people's hard-earned ideas, or deliberately try to make his colleagues look bad in front of management, just to get himself ahead.
Oh, David? Yes, I recall him quite vividly. He was certainly very ambitious, extremely driven, but perhaps not always operating in the most ethical or principled manner. So what exactly happened to him? Did he finally manage to get that big promotion he was constantly chasing after so relentlessly?
Well, no, as it turns out, it was quite the opposite, actually. A real twist of fate. Apparently, from what I've heard, he recently tried to actively undermine his new manager at his current company with the clear intention of trying to get their job for himself. But his rather devious plan backfired on him quite spectacularly. The manager somehow found out exactly what David was up to, and as a direct result, David ended up getting fired himself for grossly unprofessional conduct.
Wow, really? Fired for attempting to undermine his own manager? That's quite a dramatic and significant turn of events for him. It certainly sounds like his own consistently negative and manipulative tactics have finally, and perhaps inevitably, caught up with him.
It really does seem that way, doesn't it? The whole situation just made me think, that old saying, "what goes around comes around," really does hold true sometimes. He spent so much of his career and energy trying to get ahead by treating other people unfairly and poorly. And now, he's personally experienced a really significant negative consequence directly because of his own deliberate actions. It's undoubtedly a very tough and humbling lesson for him to learn, I'm sure.
That dialogue provides another perfect illustration of this well-known proverb in a very clear context, Emma. Mia thoughtfully used the saying, "What goes around comes around," to reflect on how their former colleague David, who clearly had an established history of engaging in unethical and manipulative behavior, eventually, and rather fittingly, faced serious negative consequences himself, all stemming directly as a result of his own repeated underhanded actions.
Exactly so, Jack. In this instance, the idiom was employed to suggest a strong sense of poetic justice, or perhaps even a form of karmic retribution, a situation where David's pattern of past negative behavior ultimately and directly led to his own professional downfall. It very effectively highlighted the fundamental idea that actions, particularly negative ones, tend to have reciprocal and often unavoidable consequences.
It's such a very common and frequently quoted proverb, one that is often deeply thought-provoking, as it touches upon the very nature of human actions and their inevitable, far-reaching repercussions.
It most certainly is, Jack. So the next time you find yourself reflecting on the unfolding consequences of someone's actions, whether those actions were good or bad, you might well find yourself remembering this timeless and wise saying, "What goes around comes around."
And, of course, we'd genuinely love to hear all of your thoughts and perspectives on this particular proverb. Do you personally believe that what goes around truly comes around in life? We invite you to share your valuable opinions, or perhaps even personal experiences related to this, in the comments section below this episode.
That's another wonderful invitation for our listeners, Jack. Now, believe it or not, we've already arrived at our fourth and final fascinating idiom for this particular episode of Idiom Insights. This last one for today is all about the concept of fighting fiercely and with unwavering resolve.
Indeed it is. Our final idiom for your consideration today is the very vivid and energetic expression, tooth and nail.
Tooth and nail. This phrase immediately conjures up an image that sounds very aggressive, incredibly determined, and perhaps even a bit primal. Rather like an animal fighting with all of its available might and natural weaponry. What exactly does it mean to fight tooth and nail for something, Jack?
Your initial imagery is absolutely spot on, Emma. To fight tooth and nail for something, or against something, means to engage in a struggle with immense ferocity, unwavering determination, and by utilizing any and all available resources at your disposal. It strongly implies a very vigorous, often aggressive, and exceedingly determined struggle, directly evoking the image of an animal fiercely using its teeth and claws, its nails, so to speak, to desperately defend itself or to relentlessly attack an opponent. Essentially, you are prepared to use every possible means to achieve your desired goal, or to prevent something undesirable from happening.
So it's fundamentally about fighting with an almost extreme level of effort and unyielding intensity, not holding anything back whatsoever in pursuit of your objective. For instance, if a local community is passionately trying to save a beloved local park or green space from being sold off to property developers, they might declare that they will fight tooth and nail to protect it. This would mean they intend to use every legal, persuasive, and community-based method possible with the utmost determination and vigor.
Precisely that, Emma. Or consider a more domestic scenario. If two siblings are arguing incredibly fiercely over who gets the privilege of using the family car on a Saturday night, they might be described as fighting tooth and nail for it, with each one absolutely determined not to give in to the other. It implies a very resolute, highly charged, and often quite desperate struggle for dominance or possession.
It doesn't necessarily imply actual physical fighting in most modern contexts, though, does it? It seems like it can be, and often is, used metaphorically for intense arguments, challenging legal battles, fierce business competitions, or indeed any situation where there's strong opposition and a deeply determined effort required to win, resist, or protect something valuable.
That's absolutely correct, Emma. While the origin of the image is undoubtedly rooted in physical combat and animalistic defense, the idiom is most often used metaphorically today to describe any kind of intense struggle or particularly determined opposition. For example, a dedicated lawyer might fight tooth and nail in court to vigorously defend their client's innocence. Or, on a larger scale, a company might fight tooth and nail to resist a hostile takeover bid from a competitor.
So, the essence of it is about employing all of one's available energy, intellect, and resources in a very determined, sometimes even aggressive manner to achieve a crucial goal or to successfully resist a formidable opponent or challenge.
Exactly, Emma. It suggests a mindset of no surrender, committing maximum effort, and a willingness to do whatever it takes, within certain bounds, to succeed.
That's a very clear explanation. So to fight tooth and nail means to fight with great ferocity, unshakable determination, and by deploying all available resources. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this fierce and powerful idiom in their dialogue, Jack?
I most certainly am, Emma. Let's listen in with anticipation. I'm quite curious to discover what it is that they might be fighting so incredibly determinedly for, or perhaps fiercely against, in their scenario.
Mark, have you heard anything about the recent proposal to significantly cut the budget for the company's much-valued employee wellness program for next year? They're apparently saying they desperately need to reduce overall operational costs, and unfortunately it seems that 𝒏𝒈 program is high on the chopping block.
What? Seriously? Cut the wellness program budget? But Mia, that program is so incredibly important for everyone here. It provides vital access to things like subsidized gym memberships, crucial mental health support services, and incredibly useful stress management workshops. So many employees genuinely benefit from it and have come to rely on it for their well-being.
I know, I completely agree. I personally think it's a truly terrible idea to even consider cutting it. If they looked at the bigger picture, it actually saves the company a significant amount of money in the long run by actively improving employee health, boosting morale, and thereby reducing absenteeism and increasing productivity. But alas, it seems like some individuals in senior management just view it as an easy, dispensable target for immediate budget cuts.
Well, I can tell you this right now. They're not going to cut that program without a serious fight from me. I believe so incredibly strongly in the immense value and positive impact of that program for all staff. I'm going to immediately start gathering all the relevant data I can find on its clear benefits, talk to other concerned employees to rally their support, and then meticulously prepare and present a very strong, evidence-based case to management. I am fully prepared to fight tooth and nail to keep that essential wellness program properly funded.
Oh, Mark, I'm so incredibly glad to hear you say that. I'll definitely support you in any way I possibly can. It's far too important a resource to let go of without a really serious and concerted struggle. You're right. We absolutely need to fight tooth and nail for it together as a united front.
That dialogue once again perfectly and vividly illustrates the idiom in a very relatable situation, Emma. Mark passionately declared his firm intention to fight tooth and nail to prevent the proposed budget cuts to the employee wellness program. By using this phrase, he was clearly signaling that he would use all his available effort, his access to resources and information, and his unwavering determination to vigorously oppose the cuts and staunchly defend the continuation of the program.
Exactly so, Jack. The idiom powerfully conveyed the sheer intensity and ferocity of his deep commitment to protecting that valuable program. It clearly showed that he was fully prepared for what would likely be a very determined, challenging, and vigorous struggle against those in favor of the cuts.
It's certainly a very common and incredibly powerful idiom, one that is excellent for describing a truly fierce, passionate, and deeply determined effort in any sphere of life.
It most definitely is, Jack. So the next time you witness someone fighting with immense determination and marshaling all their available resources for something they profoundly believe in, you can accurately remember and perhaps even use this idiom. They are indeed fighting tooth and nail.
And for our final call to our listeners today, we'd be fascinated to hear about something that you personally would fight tooth and nail for. What particular cause, principle, or belief is that important and fundamental to you? We warmly invite you to share your heartfelt thoughts in the comment section below this episode.
We genuinely always appreciate reading your insightful comments and hearing about your passion for language. Well, Jack, it seems we've successfully explored 4 more really insightful and highly useful idioms in this latest episode of Idiom Insights.
We certainly have, Emma, and what a great selection they were. Just to quickly recap for everyone tuning into Idiom Insights today, the 4 key phrases we learned are:
firstly, caught between a rock and a hard place, meaning to be in a difficult situation with 2 equally unpleasant choices.
Secondly, speak your mind, encouraging one to say what they truly think or feel. openly and honestly.
Third was, what goes around comes around. The proverb stating one's actions will eventually have reciprocal consequences.
And finally, tooth and nail, meaning to fight for something with great ferocity, determination, and all available resources.
4 more genuinely fantastic additions to your English idiom repertoire. Remember, dear listeners, the best way to make these phrases a natural part of your vocabulary is to actively listen for them in real life and media, and then to build confidence by using them yourself in appropriate contexts.
Absolutely, Emma. Don't be afraid to experiment. The more you use them, the more comfortable and fluent your English will become, and the more effectively you'll express nuanced meanings.
And if you enjoyed learning with us today on Idiom Insights, and we sincerely hope you did, please consider giving this episode a like and leaving us a positive review on your podcast platform. Your support helps us reach more learners and continue creating this content.
And please make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button for Idiom Insights so you don't miss our future episodes. We'll be back soon to continue unraveling the wonderful world of English idioms.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today. It's truly been a pleasure exploring these phrases with you.
Keep learning, keep listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon on the next Idiom Insights.
Goodbye for now, everyone.
See you later.